Hey everyone, welcome into another private webinar hosted here on the KE Report. In this private webinar, I am chatting with Paul Geddes over at Skeena Resources. I've chatted with Paul a number of times just to bring everybody up to speed. Paul is the company's Vice President of Exploration and Resource Development. Paul and I are recording this on August 25th, the day that news release came out, drill results from the Eskay Creek project. There were a couple different results mixed into this news, a few infill drill holes that showed continuous excellent grade over some very impressive widths. And I think more importantly, what a lot of people are going to be focused on here are these true exploration holes. We got 3 exploration holes all drilled below the historic mining on this project. Paul put together a couple slides, a couple graphics to help walk us through what these drill results mean. And remember, this is really a first pass drill program. The company has a large drill program that is ongoing. So we're going to be getting a lot of drill results. But first and foremost, let's get a little bit of color on these results, these exploration results. And Paul, feel free to just give us a little rundown on the infill holes as well, please.
Right on. Well, thanks so much, Corey. Appreciate you taking the time to have me, and for your listeners as well. Just our obligatory forward-looking statements. But what we really wanted to do here was just help sort of augment the press release that we put out this morning and put it all into context for your listeners and anybody that's interested. I guess the number one thing that we've always been talking about at Eskay Creek is that we've done very little exploration. You know, we were never incentivized to do anything other than the infill. And that's why we came up with our global goal of 5 million ounces of at least 5 grams per ton gold equivalent. And we're not only going to do that by performing the infill and upgrading the resource in the pit, but also doing some organic growth, just strictly through exploration. So to put again all into context, the number one thing here that we want to focus on are these synvolcanic faults, these faults that act like the plumbing system throughout the entire deposit. So again, if we come back to our original little cartoon diagram here, we can see this lower substrate and underneath the seafloor. And then we get a period of quiescence, again, as I've mentioned in the past. And that's where we get the lower mudstone. Now note that the lower mudstone is not mineralized. There's no hot springs happening. There's no hot fluid circulating. There's no sulfides being deposited. Instead, after some small period, that gets subsequently capped off by the rhyolites. Okay, and then the rhyolites, when they're in contact with the seafloor again during that secondary period of quiescence, that's where we get the formation of the mudstones. You can see there in the black being laminated, and the black smokers that are occurring as well. And the black smokers are proximal to those synvolcanic faults, because those are the conduits for the mineralizing fluids that are coming up to the seafloor interface. And then we also get a little bit of diking, a little bit of volcanism that occurs there as well, which is a little bit ancillary. But then again, the mineralizing event. This is the main mineralizing event at Eskay Creek. Now, as we all know, we get the very, very highly enriched contact mudstones here at the top at the seafloor interface. We get some mineralization occurring in the rhyolites just underneath, including some replacements and some fingers. But then what's most important is that along the synvolcanic faults, again, the conduits of this plumbing system, we get a lot of the mineralization. But what I want to draw everybody's attention to is down here in that lower mudstone, because I have alluded to earlier, there was no pre-existing mineralization down there. And that's what we've just recently learned. Instead, what's happening is we get what's called replacement mineralization. So as the fluids are moving and circulating upwards towards the sea floor, they're being trapped also in these permeable layers, which are the lower mudstones. This is a very important event for us, because what we're seeing is that the mineralization will probably be more closely related to the synvolcanic fault. And then as you get slightly further away, you can see how it dissipates and it blends out. There's also the chance that if you were to drill straight into the mudstone and you're not anywhere near a synvolcanic fault, there's the chance that you're going to get a dud, which is what we'll get to here in a second. So again, the contacts, exhalative mudstones in the 21 zones, which would be up there. And then we also get the synvolcanic feeder type mineralization, namely like the 22 zone, the 21C, and the water tower zone, which we'll talk about here in a second. So if we were to put this into context, and in the next slide, I'll actually show the data from the press release. What we basically think is hole 290, which intersected, 5 grams over essentially 5 meters, just clipped the edge of something. And we quite haven't found that new conduit yet. That's the synvolcanic fault. And what I'll do now is I'll switch to the next slide and put that all into perspective. So this drill hole here coming in through surface goes through the 21A zone, all the way down here, hits the lower mudstone. We only got trace mineralization there. And then what's so very exciting is down here, for the first time that we've tested the even lower mudstones, we got 6.26 grams per ton gold equivalent over 4.5 meters. But again, what happened is we didn't hit any sort of synvolcanic fault. So what we're imagining, though, is that there's an undiscovered or as of yet uninvestigated synvolcanic fault that lies to the east, hosting the majority of the replacement mineralization. So now that we've got this little clue, which is very exciting for us, because it's not very often that when you go fishing and you cast your line for the first time, that you actually get a fish on that very first cast. That's what we're so excited about. We'll be following up in that area as well. You can also see that in our second hole that we drilled, number 274, we intersected some very high tenor mineralization, basically close to 12 grams per ton over 6 meters in the lower mudstone. So again, the thesis is correct. But again, you can see it's kind of strike limited. Back in 2019, we drilled 314 grams over 2.21 meters, and that's about 25 meters away from it. And so we didn't really find anything new there. We just sort of expanded upon it. Now, where is that synvolcanic fault on this one? Well, it's probably on one side or the other of this sectional plane that we're looking at. So we might be looking at a parallel fault that runs maybe even slightly oblique to the section that we're looking at. And then finally, our third hole, 291, you can see here did not intersect, unfortunately, anything in the lower mudstones, nor even in the even lower mudstones. So again, the idea is that as you get closer to a synvolcanic fault, you should be seeing more of the replacement style mineralization.
So does that mean with the follow-up work, then you are moving over to the right in this cross-section that we're seeing? That's going to be the target because of the fact that the other drill hole on the left just didn't hit anything when you went into that lower mudstone area?
That's right. That's exactly right. So that's where our next focus will be. What's also really interesting too is the chemistry of these new zones. They do not possess any of the impurities, namely the mercury, the antimony, or the arsenic. These are 100% clean mineralization. And what's also interesting is that the silver tenor is very low relative to the gold. So essentially, the mineralization is just, for all intents and purposes, just gold rich. And that's it.
Was that what you were expecting? Were you expecting to get almost these pure gold results?
To be honest with you, no, not really, because again, there's not much even historical data from these areas. So we didn't really know what we were going to expect. We didn't know if we were going to see, higher than normal silver tenor, or if we were going to see base metals. It just is what it is. And it's a very pleasant surprise, to be honest with you.
So these grades in these even lower mudstone area, when you are a little over 6 grams per ton gold equivalent, that's actually fairly on par with what you were seeing at the contact mudstones up above, right around 5, 6, almost 7 grams per ton gold equivalent, but you're just hitting it over 30 plus meters. Is that a possibility there, this consistent grade, but potentially a larger intersect? Or do you think that you could be getting some higher grades if you do hit almost that feeder system you're looking for?
That is the hope, and that is the current thesis. So again, as we get closer from 290 to the synvolcanic fault, wherever it may be on this section, that we should see an increase in the tenor. And I would also expect that we would see an increase in the thickness as well, because these are just little fingers of mineralization that dissipate through the host rock, right? So again, as you get closer to that fault where everything is broken up and much more dilatant, that's where we would expect to see not only bigger widths, but bigger grades.
Okay. How many drills do you guys have on the ground right now to continue to attack the lower mudstone and the even lower mudstone zone?
So currently we're drilling with 6 rigs. They're all helicopter supported, and we'll be pushing out with those probably for about the next month, and then we'll be adding another 2 rigs as we said we'd do, and that should be mid-September or so.
Okay. In a mining scenario, how would you go and attack that even lower mudstone zone? I'm expecting just underground mining.
Yeah, exactly. Our current pit, you can see here, that's the PEA. That already has a strip ratio of about 6.5 to 1. For us to actually push that all the way back, it would be very uneconomic to do that. So we're looking at basically underground targets here. But what's also interesting too is if this pushes out, or even the lower mudstone, if we can find mineralization that occurs near surface, we might be able to generate some smaller micro pits as well that'll help feed the bigger picture.
Okay, fair enough. What other information do you have for us when it comes to the potential here of this project?
Well, it's good. I think what everybody needs to understand though is again that's just 3 drill holes over a 6 kilometer strike length, and basically what we did is we just intersected here in the 21A, just below it in the lower mudstone, and a little bit into the even lower mudstone, right here. However, we've also got numerous holes into the water tower zone that we're waiting on assays for. And essentially, we're hoping to see the same thing. So where we get a synvolcanic fault, which is what the water tower zone is, we're hoping to increase the volumes and the tonnages and the grades in that, as well as it'll be very interesting where that water tower zone intersects the lower mudstones to see if we get these larger blowouts. If we go back to the original slide, we know that this happens. It's just a matter of performing the exploration and proving it with the drill bit, essentially. So we're currently waiting on about 5 or 6 drill holes coming out of the water tower zone, and we're seeing essentially what we saw in the 21A zone underneath that.
And are those holes already completed at this water tower zone?
Yes, those holes are completed and they're in the lab, and we're just waiting on the assays for those ones.
All right, so those should be coming up soon too.
Yeah, that's right. So just to put everybody into context here, there's the water tower zone. We drilled a few holes onto this side of the water tower zone, so towards the south, along strike, as well as underneath it to test the deeper portions and the depth extensions of that as well. All of those holes probably ran anywhere from 600 to 800 meters. There's virtually no other historical drilling down there, so we're truly performing exploration and going into no man's land.
Now, I don't want you to disclose anything more than you can, but do you visually get anything from these drill holes when you hit some of these zones? Can you tell that you're in it and that it has this mineralization?
Um, let's put it this way: when we see sulfides, so if we see pyrite or the zinc or the lead or the copper, it's always a good indication that there is mineralization. So that's why these holes ended up going so deep, because every time the geologist would go to the rig, he'd see mineralization and be like, well, I can't stop the hole in this. I have to let it go for the rest of the day. And then that just kept happening over and over and over again. Now, visually, we can tell that the rock looks good, but we can't really guess on the gold silver tenor of that rock unless, for some incredible reason we happen to see visible gold. That's the only way you would actually ever know. And unfortunately, visible gold is a rarity at Eskay Creek, so I can confidently say we haven't seen that yet. But some of the preliminary numbers that we're getting back are encouraging.
Now, when it comes to the dominance of gold in these results, the lack of the deleterious elements, how does that improve a mining situation if you guys were to go deeper underground here?
Well, that just makes life easier for the concentrate, bigger picture, because without any deleterious elements or impurities, rather, you're not paying any penalties for anything that you mine. So it's a win-win situation. It's regrettable that the silver tenor wasn't higher, but on a weighted basis, the gold is worth obviously way more than the silver is. So that's absolutely fine with us.
Okay. How about this next slide here, looking at kind of the overall scale of this project?
Well, yeah, again, if we just take a look at what we just drilled, if you can, the viewers can see my laser pointer, we just drilled one section through the 21A zone. And we've just finished up a little bit of expansion work in the water tower zone down here. We still have to work that entire lower and even lower mudstone stratigraphy. So out of that 5-6 kilometer strike length, we've literally just barely scratched the surface. And not only that, on that one section, but if we go to a plan map, that's the main draft that we're looking for. We've also got a secondary trend that literally only has one drill hole on it from historical. And we've got porphyry targets, we've got soil anomalies, and to corroborate those soil anomalies, we actually have grab samples from surface that run, well, you can see there are very strong gold values. So we're quite excited about spreading our wings and getting outside the mine footprint and seeing just how big Eskay Creek really could be.
Now, are you going to be able to get this 137,000 meters that is designed here all done in this year's program?
Oh, no, definitely not. That's 137,000 meters of designed drilling. So that gives us optionality. At the end of the day, you know, the budget was about 26,000 meters for the phase one drill program to finish that off. Once the property is transferred and we can drill inside the development buffers, then there's another 45,000. And then of that grand total, we're going to add about 30% strictly to exploration in the near mine as well as regionally. But what we wanted to do was cover our bases and permit more drill holes than necessary because, you know, we may stumble into something and we want this to be results driven.
Yeah, fair enough. That's one of the nice things about the exploration drilling is that when you do find something, as long as you're permitted, you can continue to go after it. Out of that 5 to 6 kilometer length, though, how much are you going to be able to test? How much are you going to be continuing to step out this year?
Oh, we're also prioritizing all the targets too. So as an example, you know, we've already done some of the near mine drilling. What I'm very excited to go after is the McKay target. The McKay target has a cluster of, I think, 10 drill holes in it, all very shallow, less than 100 meters deep, from the original 30s when Tom McKay discovered the area and drove an adit in and did a little bit of mining himself. That really hasn't been followed up on since those days. And again, you can see here from the grab samples that have been taken on surface, the soil anomalies, we know there's something there. It's just a matter of going in, drilling it, and figuring out how much is there. What other really excites me too, again, is this second trend, this tip top area. So this would actually represent the outcropping of the even lower mudstone down here. Well, we already know that the even lower mudstone is fertile. We just have to find where it intersects and interacts with the synvolcanic feeder systems, and we're off to the races.
So you mentioned that there is a historic hole in this tip top area, the secondary trend. Do you know what those results were?
No, I think we just have a caller location, and I don't think the hole was actually sampled. It was in an assessment file report that one of my geologists had dug up. And I think it actually may have only been sampled for copper and zinc, to be honest.
Okay. Hey, this is an exciting exploration play right now. Now that you guys have this project, well, once it is fully transferred over, and the fact that you are focusing at least a little bit of the program on exploration.
Oh yeah, exactly. So yeah, again, just to remind all your listeners, you know, what we're planning on doing this year is, you know, that category conversion drilling. We're going to advance this to PFS as rapidly as possible. You know, I hate to say it like this, but it's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. We're just putting holes in between holes to upgrade the resource, give it more confidence, and if everything goes the way we think it's going to, you know, help increase the grade of the deposit itself. We're going to take 30% of that grand program and we're going to do just strictly grassroots exploration, you know, not only in the near mine, but regional, like the Tom McKay, the tip top, water tower zone underneath the 21A, anywhere underneath the entire deposit, really. And then, you know, the very realistic target that we've set for ourselves is at least 5 million ounces at least 5 grams per ton gold equivalent.
How quickly do you think you can get to that global target?
Um, well, what was the old standby? If you give Atlas a place to stand, he can move the earth. So it's the number of drills, really.
Okay. Well, I think that pretty much sums it up. I hope this provided a bit more color and context to these recent drill results and the fact that this is a lot of true exploration drilling underneath old mining, and the fact that you did actually hit something in this even lower mudstone. And in the lower mudstone, it sounds like we're going to be getting a lot of news coming out of the company, a lot of drill results. We'll keep following up, and when needed, we will keep doing these private webinars so that we can provide a little bit more color on the actual drill results and the location of them. If anybody has any follow-up questions for Paul or the team over at Skeena, please email me, fleck@kereport.com. I will happily get those answered for you. Paul, I appreciate your time. Thanks for putting this together. Thanks for walking us through these recent batch of results.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you having us.